Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Daled, Daf 4, Masechta Beitzah. Friends, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, but if I was a betting person, I would say today's Daf is probably going to be an hour plus. But by the time you get to this Daf, you'll already just be able to see that. But this seems to be like a pretty, kind of like a pretty big Daf. Yeah, man, Beitzah is kind of like Masechta Shabbos. I don't know, like big dafs, a lot of content, not very fast moving. Anyways, so today's daf, we continue with our discussion from yesterday, which was that we were trying to understand how come an egg that's a treifa would not just simply be batel barov, right? We had a Beitzah which says that when you have a suffix regarding this Beitzah shenolda b'yom tiv, so we say that the suffix is aser. Now, while this could make sense according to Rabbah, who says that we're talking about Nisr Deoraisa of Hachana, but according to Rav Yosef, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, who say that it's a din d'Rabbanan about whether it's Peres HaNoshin or whether it's Mashkin Shezavu. If we're talking about a din d'Rabbanan, so a suffix d'Rabbanan should be the kula, so why would it be aser? So we want to say that it's according to Rav Yosef, according to Rav Beitzah, they'll say it's talking about the suffix that we're talking about has nothing to do with Beitzah shenolda b'yom tiv. It's talking about a treifa. That if we're not sure if this egg came from a chicken that's a treifa or not, in which case that's why. So it's a suffix d'oraisa of treifa, in which case it's also. So then the question becomes. Then the Bryce had also said that if it gets mixed into 1,000 other eggs, it's not batel. It's not batel. The question is, why is it not batel barov? So then we got into the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says, right, that meaning because in order for it to not be batel barov, like the Bryce is saying, it would have to be significant. It would have to be chashuv, right? And so the question is, how do we determine chashivos, the significance of an egg? So there's two ways to understand it. You have the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that for something to be considered significant, so then for something to be considered significant, it has to be something that is exclusively sold by specific numbers. But if it's not something that's exclusively sold by specific numbers, then it's not considered significant. Now, an egg, while often it's sold in particular numbers, you know exactly how many eggs you're buying, 12 eggs or whatever it is. You could theoretically also sell it in another way, let's say by weight or something like that. So it wouldn't necessarily be considered significant. According to Rish Lakish, though, he says, kol davar shebeminyan, right? Anything that even if it's sometimes sold in particular numbers, it would be considered significant. So according to Rish Lakish, you can understand that you can explain that an egg is considered significant because it's something that is sold in numbers, even if not exclusively sold in numbers, but it is something that's sold in numbers, therefore it's significant. So I can understand why we could say that we're talking about a treifa, and therefore a suffix, if it comes from a treif, chicken or not, is going to be aser, and also will not be batel even in 1,000 eggs, because it's considered significant because it's something that at least sometimes is sold by a specific number. The question was, according to the way that Rabbi Yochanan understands, which is that it has to be exclusively sold in numbers in order for it to be considered significant. Well then, why? So an egg is not significant then because it's not exclusively sold in numbers, and therefore it should be batel barov. So why isn't it batel barov? So, wow, that was kind of a long-winded way to say that we're going to start off by trying to answer that question. Okay, I have a little coffee companion today. And then we move on to what happens when Shabbos goes into Yom Tiv, Yom Tiv goes into Shabbos. Okay, fine. And then at the end we get into Yom Tiv Sheni Shel Golius, right? What happens that nowadays when there are 2 days of Yom Tiv, but how do we treat, do we have 2 days of Yom Tiv because it's a suffix? Do we have 2 days of Yom Tiv because it's din d'Rabbanan, that it's considered like one long day? So we can get into those nafkaminas also. So as I said, it's been several minutes already and we haven't even started the daf. So it's a dense daf today. There's a lot of over here, but it's a lot of good stuff. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. So as I gave in that sort of lengthy introduction, we're trying to answer that if you're Rabbi Yochanan and you say that in order for something to be considered significant, it has to be something that's exclusively sold in numbers, that is not the case by an egg. So an egg would not then considered fit the significance bill. So then why don't we just say that it's batel barov when there are 1,000 of these eggs? That might be a treifa. Well, when there's one egg, that might be a treifa, but it's among 1,000 other eggs. So Omer Apape Aitana Tana Delitra Ktsiasus. It says Apape that, well, the author of the Beitzah, who is saying that an egg would be considered significant and therefore not batel barov, is the following Tana in the context of basically like fig cakes, right? You take figs, you dry them out, you stuff them together into these like dense fig cakes. So we're going to see that there's a certain Tana there who would be able to be the Tana of the Beitzah that says that eggs are not batel even in 1,000 eggs. Let's see. Fine. The Omar Kol Davar Shebeminyan, that he says any Davar Shebeminyan, Kilu, something that even if it's not exclusively sold in numbers, but it's able to be sold in numbers. So then it's Afilu b'Darabanan lo batil, v'chol sheken b'Doraisa. Even when it comes to dinim d'Rabanan, it would not be batel. And certainly if Doraisa is like this, like an egg that might be a treifa, it's not going to be batel. The Tanan is we learn in the Mishnah, litra ktsias shedarsa al pi igul. Okay. So if you have a litra of these sort of like fig cake thingies, so basically you would take like a bunch of figs, dry them out, squeeze them all together real tight to create these like pack them in to create these like fig cake type things. So shadar salpia eagle. Now there was this vessel that was called an eagle, I guess some kind of a round thing that you would stuff all the figs into to make these these fig cakes. So if you have figs and they're truma, that's sort of a crucial point, detail here, is that these figs are truma figs, and truma of course can only be eaten by kohanim. So if you have these figs and they're truma and they're stuffed into one of these eagle kalim thingies, eagle, but there's a lot of these eagle thingies and he doesn't know which one is the truma one. You got a whole bunch of them. Most of them are not truma, they're chulin. But one of these eagle devices has a bunch of figs that are truma in them. Now what do? They're all mixed together, all these eagle thingies. So he doesn't know which eagle thing has the truma figs and which has chulin figs. Or he stuffed these figs into the top of a barrel and he doesn't know which barrel it is. Or he put it on the opening to a basket, but he's not sure lemaise which basket it is. So now in all these cases, he basically stuffed the figs into the top of let's use a barrel. I feel like the barrel example is probably the easiest one to visualize. You have a whole big barrel. Now, most of the barrel is stuffed with figs that are not truma. They're chulin. But on the top of it, on the top of one of the barrels, he's got a whole bunch of barrels. And, most of them are entirely chulin. In one of the barrels, it's almost entirely chulin, but at the top layer, he kind of stuffed in these figs. And now, so basically, he's got a whole bunch of barrels. In one of the barrels, on the top layer, in the top section, there are a bunch of truma figs packed in, and he doesn't know which barrel it is. Reb Meir Omer, so it says Reb Meir, Reb Eliezer Omer, Roin es elyonos kilu en prudos, batachtonos malos es elyonos, Reb Yoshua Omer, em yesham mea pumin yalu, vim lava pumin asurin, vashulayim mutarin. So, we'll read that again, but basically, we have a machlokas between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about how to understand the machlokas between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. So basically there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, but Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda have different versions, different takes on what exactly the machlokas between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer is. So again, Rabbi Meir Omer, so it says Rabbi Meir, the following is the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. That Rabbi Eliezer Omer says Rabbi Eliezer, Ronis elyonis, kilu ein prudis, vatachtonis malis elyonis. Basically, says Rabbi Eliezer, you could just view it all like one big mixture. That, you have several barrels, and each barrel, right, most of the barrels are entirely chulin. There's one barrel that's mostly chulin, but the top of it has some truma figs stuffed in. It says, look, when it comes to truma, when truma gets mixed together with chulin, it's what's called meduma. It's a mixture of truma and chulin. If there are 100 parts of chulin and 1 part of truma, so then the mixture become the truma can become bottle in that mixture. So the question is, how do we calculate the 100 parts? So says Rabbi Eliezer, you can actually treat the entire barrel. So each barrel, so of all the barrels, most of them are entirely chulin. And even in the one barrel that has the truma figs on top, the rest, they're at the bottom of the barrel, the rest of the barrel is going to be chulin. So if among all the barrels, in the entirety of the barrels, there are 100 parts of chulin to one part of this truma, and as long as there are 100 parts of chulin among all the barrels and everything, 100 parts more than the truma, so then the truma will be batel, will be nullified. Okay, fine. So again, Rabbi Eliezer Omer says, Rabbi Eliezer, Roanis Alyonos, review the tops. Kilu and prudos, as if they're separate. Vatachtonos malus Alyonos, and the bottom parts can now join together with all the top parts, and everything kind of comes together to create one big mixture of figs. And as long as the truma, there's only one part of truma to at least 100 parts of chulin, the truma can be batel, and that is that. Rabbi Yeshua says, Rabbi Yeshua, Im yesham mea pumin, says Rabbi Yeshua, look, if there are essentially 100 barrels, and therefore, well, really 101 barrels. So if you have 100 barrels of chulin, i.e., the tops of all the 100 barrels are chulin, and then there's one barrel where the top is truma, and you're just not sure which barrel it is. So yalu. So in that case, you could say that the 100 truma barrels, the 100 chulin barrels will be mavatal the one truma barrel. V'imla v'pumin asurin v'ashulayim mutarin. But if there aren't 100 barrels of chulin, so then I'm sorry, the tops of the barrels are all going to be asur. You have to treat them as if they're truma. But the bottoms of the barrels, because we know that the truma is specifically at the top of one of the barrels, so the rest of the barrels, though, you would be able to eat because you know that that's certainly chulin. But the tops would all be off limits because you don't have 100 tops of chulin to one top of truma. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So that was Rabbi Meir's take on the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. That Rabbi Eliezer says that you could basically treat all of the figs together, the tops, the bottoms, all of them together. If there are 100 parts of chulin and one part of truma, the truma is batel. Rabbi Yeshua says no, you can't be quite that lenient. Rather, you can only take into account the tops of the barrels. If there are basically 100 barrels and therefore 101 barrels and 100 tops of them are chulin and one of them is truma, so then the truma can be batel. But if you don't have 101 barrels, so then all of the tops will be, you have to treat as truma, they're off limits, but the bottoms, which you know is chulin, would be permitted. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer Omer says Rabbi Eliezer, Yesham mea pumin yailu v'mlava pumin asun v'ashulam mutar. Basically, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is the same as Rabbi Yeshua's opinion according to Rabbi Meir, which is that if you have 101 barrels and therefore you have 100 tops that are chulin and one top that is truma, so then the truma could be batel. But if you don't have 101 barrels, well then all the tops are off limits because you have to treat them as truma, but the bottoms are all acceptable because you know that the truma is dafka at the top. Fine. Rabbi Yeshua Omer says, Rabbi Yeshua, afilu yesh sham shlosh meus pumin lo yailu. And this is how to explain the egg. That says Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if there are 300 of these barrels, it doesn't matter. Rabbi Yeshua says, Kilu, all you need technically is 100 parts chulin to one part truma. But says Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that even if you have 300 barrels, and interestingly, we've seen a number of times that whenever the Gemara says 300, it means an exaggeration, meaning a lot of them, any number of them. Even if you have a lot of, more than 100 to 1 ratio, still the one top of truma is not going to be batel because it's an individual thing that can be sold individually. So what do we see? So we see that according to Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda, when you have something that can be sold individually, such as this like fig cake thing, it will not be batal. And this is by din derabanan. What makes this what makes truma over here derabanan? Because midoraisa truma is only by ma'aser degancha tiroshcha v'tzarecha, by grain, wine, and oil, grain, grapes, and olives. Everything else is only truma midirabanan. And therefore, here we have something that can be sold individually, this fig cake thing, and it's by din derabanan, truma derabanan by figs, and yet we're saying that this one thing that can be sold individually is chashuv enough that it's never going to be batal. So memele, when it comes to an egg that is a suffix deoraisa, then maybe it's taka a treifa. We don't know. It might be a treifa. It's a suffix deoraisa. Since it's something that could be sold individually, it's not going to be batal, and that is going to be so. Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is going to be the opinion in that brisa that says that this egg, even if it gets mixed together, so we're talking about an egg that is a suffix treifa, and even if it gets mixed together with 1,000 other eggs, it will not be batal, and all of the eggs are going to be off limits. Darsa be'igul ve'enudebe is the eagle darsa de've'akol yailu. So now the Gemara says if you put the figs into one of these eagles, one of these fig cake making devices, and you don't know which one you put it in, everyone agrees that it'll become batal. The Gemara says, what do you mean everybody agrees it'll be batal? Like, what does that mean? Didn't we just have like a big complicated machlokas about this stuff? This is what it means. Darsa be'igol ve'nudebe is umakum be'igol darsa. It's phony the drama. What it means is that if you put these figs of truma into this eagle device, but you don't know where exactly in the device they are, so in that case, Tivrei Akol Yailu, everyone says that, well then, in this case, you don't know exactly where in this device these figs are, so then you could, it's considered mixed in with the entire device, and now all of a sudden the entire device can be taken into account to figure out whether you have the 100 parts to the one part or not, and you don't know exactly, where the truma is, so it's not like something that's going to be sold individually because you don't even know where it is, so therefore it can be batal if you have 100 parts, chulin to one part, truma. Rav Ashi Omar, says Rav Ashi, L'olim Safik Yomtiv Safik Chol. Says, fine. Says Rav Ashi, going back to our original question. What was our original question? Our original question was that we have this brisa that we've just been discussing. That in this brisa, it says that if you have a suffix, right, we're talking about Beitzah Shenol Debi Yomtiv, and if it's a suffix, so then it's aser. And the question, what does it mean if it's a suffix that it's aser? So if we're saying if it's a suffix, whether it was born on Yom Tiv or whether it was born during the week, well then if you're Reb Yosef or Reb Yitzchak that says that it's only Asur Midrabanan out of a concern of what was it called? The Perus, what were those called? Perus Hanoshrin, or because Mashkin Shazavu, which is only Din Derabanan. Well, if that's the case, that they're only Asur in the first place, even when they're born on Mamish and Yom Tiv, Midin Derabanan anyways. So now if it's a suffix, whether it was born on Yom Tiv or whether it was born during the week, it should be mutter. Why is the Brisa saying that it's Asur? So we wanted to say, well, it's talking about, you can answer for Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, that it's talking about a treifa. Therefore, it's actually suffix deoraisa. Says Rav Ashi that you can actually say that the suffix is, maybe it was born on Yom Tiv, maybe it was born during the week, we don't know. Well, if that's the case, then isn't it a suffix derabanan? Shouldn't we say suffix derabanan likula and it should be mutter? So Amar of Ashi. So Rav Ashi, Amar says Rav Ashi, the olam suffix yom tiv suffix chol. No, so really we are talking about, we're not sure if the egg was laid on Yom Tiv or during the week. Well, if that's the case, according to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, shouldn't it just be a suffix derabanan? In which case it should be likula, and we should say that it should be mutter. So avidavar sheish lo matirin. Says Rav Ashi, yes, but this egg is a davar sheish lo matirin, right? If you just, even though yes, it's only a suffix derabanan, but it's something that if you just wait until the next day, until Yom Tov is over, then it's going to be completely mutter. There's no question about it. There's only even a question in the first place for Yom Tov. So since it's something that is, could just be completely mutter, the next day, it's a davar sheish lo matirin, something that can become mutter. Something that can become mutter. So even if it's only also midirabanan, Nonetheless, we're not going to say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula over here, since, just wait a little bit and it'll become mutter, and then you can, and then you can eat it then. So even by Safek D'Rabbanan, by Adav Sheish Matirin, we're going to be Machmir. Okay. Now we have another Beitzah about an egg that's born on Yom Tiv. Tanya Acherim Omrim Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Beitzah Teyachol Hi V'Ima. Okay. Acherim is Rabbi Meir. Acherim say in the name of Rabbi Eliezer Beitzah Teyachol that an egg that's born on Yom Tiv can be eaten Hi V'Ima. The egg can be eaten as well as the mother can also be eaten on Yom Tiv. Fine. What are we talking about? Now this is of course going to have to be according to Beis Shammai, right? Beis Hillel would say that you're not allowed to eat it. Well, if we're talking about a chicken that's meant to be eaten, so pshita divi imasharya. Well, obviously, fine, if you want to say that the egg could be eaten, so just teach me that the egg could be eaten. But obviously, if it's a chicken that could be eaten, that's meant for eating, so obviously you can eat the chicken. The egg maybe is a chiddush that you can eat it, but the chicken obviously you can eat. So rather we're talking about a chicken that's for the eggs, in which case it's muktzah. Well, if that's the case, hivi ima asura. If it's muktzah, then you shouldn't be allowed to eat the chicken or the eggs, because you're not planning to eat it. It's an egg producing chicken. The egg didn't exist before Yom Tif. It's nolad, and the chicken itself is not meant for eating, so it's muktzah. So, and as Rashi points out, Rabbi Eliezer holds of muktzah. So what's the deal? Rabbi Eliezer is saying that if you have an egg that's laid on Yom Tif, you're allowed to eat it and its mother. The question is, if it's talking about a chicken that's meant for eating, well then obviously you can eat the mother. Why do we have to teach you can eat the mother? And if it's a chicken that's for eggs, so then the chicken, both the chicken and the egg are muktzah, you shouldn't be allowed to use it. So, Amr Bzera, Te'achol agav ime. What it means is that you can eat it based on the mother. What does that mean? Hey Chidami, Amr Abaye, says Abaye, Kigon Shelak Chostam. Well, let's say you purchased a chicken without any particular intention. You purchased a chicken without specifying whether you want it for the eggs or whether you want it to eat it. So in that case, what's its status? So nishchita huvera de lachila omedes. Well, if you end up slaughtering it, well then clearly you had intention to be eating it. And if you have intention to be eating it as food, so then you can eat the eggs as well. Lo nishchita. And if you don't slaughter it, well then huvera de legalo beitzah omedes. Well then clearly your intention is not to be eating it, it's rather to be getting eggs. And therefore would be you would not be allowed to eat the egg. So according to Abzer, that's what Acherim is saying, is that right when it says that you can eat the egg and its mother, it means that based on the mother you can or cannot eat the egg. If you end up slaughtering the mother, then memele it's for food and you can eat the egg. If you don't slaughter the mother, so memele it's for eggs, in which case it's muksa. Rav Mari Amar says of Mari Guzma Katani. Says of Mari, no, really we're talking about a chicken that is for eating. Well, if it's a chicken for eating, fine, so maybe there's a chiddush that I can eat the egg. But why do I have to teach me that I can eat the chicken? Obviously I can eat the chicken. I bought the chicken to eat it. So says of Mari, Guzma Katani. It's an exaggeration. We didn't need to teach that you can eat the mother. Obviously you can eat the mother. The Beitzah was just getting carried away and exaggerated. And it said something that we already knew, but to sort of, for emphasis, it said not only can you eat the egg, you can even eat the mother. The Tanya is we learn in a Beitzah. 1 second, gonna chop a stick of coffee. The Tanya is we learn in a Beitzah. Acherim omrim, say Acherim mishum Rabbi Eliezer, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Beitzah te'achol hi ve'ima. You can eat the egg as well as the mother. Ve'efroach ve'klipaso, as well as a chick and its shell. My klipaso, what do you mean that you're going to eat the shell? Ilema klipa mamish klipa basachilei. What do you mean? If you're going to tell me that we're saying that you can eat the shell, why would you eat a chicken, an egg shell? Ella efrach bikli paso. Rather, maybe let's say it means that you can eat a chicken in a shell, meaning if you have a chick that has not yet come out of the shell, and we're saying that you can eat that chick. But that's not true. There's a machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov with regard to a chick that is born, that is hatched, but it hasn't yet opened its eyes. Can you eat it? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says no. The Chachamim say yes. But that machlokas is only specifically once the chick has hatched. But where the chick has not yet hatched, everyone agrees that you would not be allowed to eat it. So therefore, what's the deal? When the Beitzah says that you're allowed to eat a chick and its shell, why would it say that you're allowed to eat the shell? It's not saying a chick in its shell, because you're not allowed to eat a chick in its shell. Meaning a chick that's still in its shell. You wouldn't be able to open up the shell and eat it. So it must be talking about a chick that's hatched, and we're saying that you're not allowed to eat the shell. Obviously you're not allowed to eat the shell. Who eats shells? Right, so not that you're not allowed to eat, but just like who eats shells? So, Ella, Efrach v'klipas uguzma chanami teochli v'imo guzma. Rather, what's the deal with the shell? It's an exaggeration. I don't know. The Bryce is getting carried away, right? You're not allowed to eat. So meaning you're allowed to eat a chick as well as its shell. I don't know what that means. It's some kind of exaggeration of sorts. So therefore, also when it says that you're allowed to eat the egg and its mother, it doesn't need to teach that you could eat the mother. We know you can eat the mother, but the Bryce seems to be getting carried away, and it's saying not only the egg but also the mother. All right, sounds very nice to me. Itmar, it was stated. Now, all right, this next piece of Gemara is a shtickle funny, but well, we're going to work through it. There's a little bit of logic here that Tosfos asked the kasha, that it's not, you can ask some kashas on it, but let's see, let's go weiter. Itmar was stated Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Okay, so you have Shabbos, and right after Shabbos is Yom Tov. Okay. Rav Amar no de baze asura baze. Says Rav, if you have, so we have Shabbos followed by Yom Tov. So if you have an egg that was laid on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it the next day on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yochanan Amar no de baze muteres baze. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, if you have an egg that was hatched, that was laid on Shabbos, you are allowed to eat it the next day on Yom Tov. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Sounds very nice. Machlokas Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav says that an egg that is laid on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat on Yom Tov. That's the next day. Rabbi Yochanan says that an egg that's laid on Shabbos, you are allowed to eat the next day on Yom Tov. Fine. Ne'maksav Rav kedusha achasi. So let's say, why does Rav say that you're not allowed to eat the egg that was laid on Shabbos the next day on Yom Tov? Because it's all one kedusha. It's all one holiness. There's no interruption of holiness. There's a holiness that starts at Friday night when Shabbos begins, and it doesn't end until Motzei Yom Tov on Sunday night. It's all one holiness, and therefore this egg that was laid on Shabbos has the same exact status until the end of Yom Tov on Sunday night. But that's not true. Let's read that again. But Rav says that the halacha karbo zakenim, that the halacha is like the four elders, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the Amar who says, shtei kedusha saying, that it's not one long kedusha, one long holiness, it's two separate holinesses. And therefore, I guess if we want to say, if Shabbat, we treat Shabbos and Yom Tov as two separate holinesses, and therefore, so they're two distinct days. And an egg that was born on Shabbos, so you can't eat it on Shabbos, but I can eat it the next day on Yom Tov. So Ella, here we seem to somehow be, the machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is about achana derabba. So both Rav and Rabbi Yochanan agree that we're talking about two separate kedushos, two separate holinesses. Okay? But the question is, somehow it's related to the achana derabba. That Rabba's whole thing about any egg that was laid today was really ready and prepared the day before. And the hachana is midoraisa, and we're talking about an issue midoraisa over here. And Rav, right, where are we? Rav isle hachana derabba, that Rav holds of hachana of Rabba, and for some reason that makes it usur. Rabbi Yochanan leis le'achana derabba, and Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold of hachana of Rabba, and therefore it's permitted. Now, as Tosfos asks, what does hachana of Rabba have to do with anything? What do they say? What does this have to do with the price of tea in China? That's like a thing, right? What does this have to do with the price of tea in China? I don't know. Tosfos gives some answers, but It's a better kasha than answer, I think. Friends, what does that have to do with hachana? I don't know. Hachana, what's the hachana of Rabbah? Hachana of Rabbah is that when an egg is born on Sunday, we have to be concerned that, well, if it's laid on Sunday, so then the hachana was complete on Shabbos. Over here, if it was late on Shabbos, we're saying it's late on Shabbos, which means, according to Rabbah, the hachana would have been on Erev Shabbos. So what's the problem? So, anyways, Tosfos gives some kind of answer that if it's late today, then Memela part of the hachana was also today. The question is better than the answer, I think. Anyways, so, okay, we want to say somehow Rav says that it's also because it has to do with the hachana of Rabbah. Fine. Where am I? The Rabbah, Kamifiki Rav Islay hachana the Rabbah, Rabbi Yochanan Leislay hachana the Rabbah, Kitanoi, like a machloka is Tanoim. Nolda b'Shabbos te'achol b'Yom Tiv. If you have an egg that was laid on Shabbos, it can be eaten on Yom Tiv. B'Yom Tiv te'achol b'Shabbos. If you have an egg that was laid on Yom Tiv, it's allowed to be eaten on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Adayni machlokas. No, it's taka machlokas. Shebeishamim omrim te'achol. Beishamim say that you can eat it from one day to the other. Uveisela omrim lo te'achol, that it would not be allowed to be eaten. Okay, sounds very fun to me. Okay, so we have machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan about if you can eat this egg that was laid on Shabbos, can you eat it on Yom Tiv, or if it was born on Yom Tiv, can you eat it on Shabbos? And we're going to see soon how we paskin. Ushpi zochni de Rav Ada bar Ahava havu lehanach beitzim b'Yom Tiv l'Shabbos. So Rav Ada bar Ahava was staying at some fellow, and this fellow had some chickens, and these chickens gave birth to eggs, and these eggs were given laying to on Yom Tiv, and the next day was Shabbos. So Yom Tiv was on a Friday, and so Shabbos was the next day, and the chickens that belonged to the person that Rav Ada bar Ahava was staying at, I feel like I'm making it a lot more complicated than it is. Rav Ada bar Ahava was staying at Reuven's house, okay? Reuven had chickens. The chickens laid eggs on Yom Tiv. Yom Tiv was a Friday, which means the next day was going to be Shabbos. He wants to know, there are these eggs now. Can I cook the eggs today, on Friday, on Yom Tiv, so we can eat them on Shabbos? So Rav Ada bar Ahava. So Rav Ada bar Ahava was staying at Reuven's house. Havu le'anach beitzim Yom Tiv l'Shabbos, and it was Yom Tiv on a Friday, and Reuven's chickens laid eggs, and he wanted to know also the kame to Rav Ada bar Ahava. He came before Rav Ada bar Ahava. Havule, where am I? Also the kame omerle ma'ula atvinu ha'inev v'nechlinu l'machos. So he asks Rav Ada bar Ahava, hey, Rav Ada bar Ahava, can I cook these eggs today on Yom Tiv, and then we'll be able to eat them tomorrow on Shabbos? So Rav Ada bar Ahava says to Reuven, his host, he says, what makes you think that this should be permitted? Rabbi Yochanan lochak Rabbi Yochanan? Is it because we say that in general when there's machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan says that an egg born on Yom Tiv is allowed, an egg laid on Yom Tiv is allowed on Shabbos? But afilu Rabbi Yochanan lo kashari el legoma lemachar. Rabbi Yochanan only says that on Shabbos the next day you'll be allowed to eat it. But on Yom Tiv itself, it's still going to be muktzah. What does Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan says that an egg that's laid on Yom Tiv, you can eat the next day on Shabbos. But only the next day. That day, it's going to be muktzah. You're not going to be able to cook it today for tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you want to eat it raw, eat it raw. But today, you're not going to be allowed to cook it. It's muktzah today. And after all, we learn in a Beitzah, achas Beitzah shenolda b'Shabbos v'achas Beitzah shenolda b'Yom Tiv. If you have an egg that's born on Shabbos or an egg that's born on Yom Tiv, you can't move this egg not to cover up some kind of jug with it. You ever cover up a jug with an egg? I never thought to do that. If you have like a pitcher of water and you want to cover it, so just take an egg and shtup it in to the opening. And now that, oh wow, what's the deal with lights in Israel? They just like explode. They don't like go out on their own. They like explode. I feel like that doesn't really happen in America. Like in Eretz Yisrael, when these lights had enough, they just explode. Also, these lights, I feel like I just put them in recently. Like, why are they exploding already? Chaver, remember when I was sitting in the dark? Ke'eshe b'choshech Hashem orli? When was that? That was like at the end of, I feel like that was like at the end of Masechta Yoma, maybe? I can't remember. Probably. What was that? That was like a month or two ago. I feel like lights should last longer than that. But half the lights are already out. So, anyways, back to using eggs as lids. Lamaisa, try it out. Let us know how it goes. So in Mitalton also lo l'chasos boes akliv lo l'smoch b'karimita, and you can't put it under the post of a bed in order to even it out, I guess, make it stable. So we see that an egg that's born on Yom Tiv is going to be, or Shabbos is going to be muktzah that day. Ushpizichne de Rav Papa, v'amila ugavda also l'kam de Rav Papa. Rav Papa also was staying at somebody's house. Some takas say somebody came to Rav Papa to ask a kasha. Havle hanoch beitzim mishabas liyom tiv. So this fellow had some eggs that were laid on Shabbos, and the next day was going to be Yom Tiv. So this fellow came before Rav Papa, and he says, look, Rav Papa, today's Shabbos, tomorrow's Yom Tiv. Can I eat these eggs tomorrow on Yom Tiv? Rav Papa says, look, come back tomorrow. Because Rav would always had a principle that he would never give a halacha shir after he ate his Suda on Yom Tiv, because at the Suda on Yom Tiv he'd be drinking wine, and he doesn't want to give any piskei halacha to say what the halacha is, to advise people of halacha when he has had any amount of wine. He's scared that he'll be drunk. So therefore, Papa said, look, I already had my Shabbos Suda today. Come back tomorrow, and we could discuss it. So then when this fellow came back to Rav Papa the next day, Rav Papa said, he says, it's a good thing that you came back today, because if this was yesterday, after I was already post Shabbos Suda, I would have made a mistake, because because what it would have told you is that, look, in general, when we have machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan. So therefore Rav says, right, Rav had said that an egg laid on Shabbos is also on Yom Tiv. Rabbi Yochanan says that an egg laid on Shabbos is mutter on Yom Tiv. So I would have told you, Lemaise, that, well, in general, machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, therefore I would have advised that you would be allowed to eat the egg tomorrow on Yom Tiv. However, Rava said that there are three exceptions where we paskin like Rav rather than Rabbi Yochanan, and this is one of the three exceptions. We'll get to the other exceptions a little bit later on. But this is one of the three exceptions, and we taka paskin like Rav, and therefore you would not be allowed to consume this egg tomorrow on Yom Tiv. Let's go weiter. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, etzim shenoshu min hadekel. Very nice. If you have trees that fell down, wood that fell down from a palm tree, lemaise, b'Shabbos, on Shabbos, osla sikin b'Yom Tiv. Okay? So, if you have, right, so you have a palm tree, some of the wood from the palm tree falls down on Shabbos, the next day is Yom Tiv, can you use this wood the next day on Yom Tiv? Says Rabbi Yochanan, no. Also, lasikim ben Yom Tiv, you would not be allowed to use this wood in Yom Tiv for firewood. Ve'al tashiveni Beitzah. And don't say but. Don't say that. Don't say but. But you said that when it comes to an egg that's born on Shabbos, you're allowed to use on Yom. An egg that's laid on Shabbos, you're allowed to use on Yom Tiv. So I'll say that wood that fell down from a tree on Shabbos, I should be allowed to burn on Yom Tiv. No. My time of Beitzah, how come an egg that's born on Shabbos you're allowed to use on Yom Tiv? Well, mishum debiyoma nami chazi legoma, because technically there's nothing wrong with consuming an egg on Shabbos. You're allowed to eat eggs on Shabbos. Lemaisa, my mom, she makes egg salad on Shabbos. What do you want me to tell you? You're allowed to eat eggs on Shabbos. What do you want me to tell you? You're allowed to. And yet, we say that when an egg is born on Shabbos, you're not allowed consume it because it was born that day, but you can consume it the next day on Yom Tiv. So the Bas Yoma Asura. So you're going to say, okay, that's interesting. There's nothing wrong with eating eggs I'm allowed to eat eggs on Shabbos. And interestingly, when this egg was born on Shabbos, we say don't eat it today, wait till tomorrow. It's clear, why was I unable to eat it on Shabbos? Because it's muktzah. Because, an egg that's born on Shabbos is nolad, it's muktzah. You can't eat it on Shabbos. Wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow you can eat it. So it's clear, I get what's going on over here, right? Even though theoretically I should be able to eat eggs on Shabbos, but this particular egg I can't eat because it was born on Shabbos, because it's nolad. Okay, it's like clear what's going on over here, that, because of nolad, because it was muktzah, I wasn't allowed to eat it on Shabbos. I have to wait till Sunday, till Yom Tov. But eitzim, however, wood is a different story. I can't burn wood on Shabbos. And therefore, if we say, look, you're not allowed to use this wood on Shabbos, you have to wait till Sunday to use it. Well, I'll say, okay, obviously. So I'll say, yeah, okay, I couldn't use the wood on Shabbos because it's Shabbos. You're not allowed to burn wood on Shabbos. So Memela, I have to wait till Sunday. On Sunday, I could use the wood. But I would think that the reason why I was not allowed to use it on Shabbos was only because it was Shabbos and I can't burn wood on Shabbos. But the truth is, it's more than that. Right? I mean, if we say that you're allowed to use the wood that fell from the tree on Sunday, right? Meaning wood that fell from the tree on Shabbos. Says Rabbi Yochanan, you're not allowed to use it on Sunday. The question is, why not? After all, you're allowed to eat an egg that was born on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat it on Sunday. We say, yeah, but when it comes to wood, if we allow you to burn this wood that fell from the tree on Sunday, you're going to come to the conclusion that, why was I not allowed to use it yesterday? Because it was Shabbos. I'm not allowed to burn wood on Shabbos. But the truth of the matter is that the reason why you weren't allowed to use the previous day, in addition to the fact that it was Shabbos, was also because when it falls down from the tree that day, you're not allowed to use it because it's muktzah. And therefore, I won't realize that. If we allow you to use the wood that fell on Shabbos on Sunday, I'll think the only reason why I wasn't allowed to use it the previous day was because you're not allowed to burn wood on Shabbos. But I might think that inherently, right, let's say the wood would fall down from the tree on Sunday, I would think, I could use it. I wouldn't think that, no, I couldn't use it the day before also because it was nolad, because it fell down from the tree that day. And because we don't want you to draw the wrong conclusion about the wood, we say that wood that fell down from the tree on Shabbos, you're even not allowed to use on Sunday. To make it clear that, wood that falls down from a tree, you're not allowed to use on Yom Tov. Whereas by an egg, we don't really have that concern because just from the fact that we say don't use it today, use it tomorrow, it's clear that the reason why you're not using it on Shabbos is because of nolad. Omer of Masna says, Masna eitzim shenoshu min hadekel. If you have trees that fell down from a palm tree, l'soch a taner b'Yom Tov, into a oven on Yom Tov. Perfect. Bullseye. You have a oven under a tree, a branch from the tree falls down right into your oven. You don't have to move it, you don't have to do nothing. So even though we said a second ago that wood that falls from a tree on Yom Tov you're not allowed to use, but if a mamish fell right into your oven, you don't even have to do anything, it's just ready to go. So So what you do is you just take wood that you had already set aside in advance, so they're not muktzah, they're already set aside in advance, pile up some wood, be mavatal the wood that fell from the tree berov, and now you can just light up your oven and gevaldik. But 1 second. But when you kind of have to stoke the coals and stuff, aren't you going to be moving around this muktzah wood that fell from the tree? So the Gemara answers, well, but since you're adding on all this other non-muktzah wood, this usable wood, so you're going to be mevatel the muktzah wood that fell from the tree. And therefore, it's like the muktzah wood doesn't even exist anymore. And therefore, there's no problem. What about the fact that you are intentionally being mevatel something that's asur? You're not allowed to, meaning, right, some, right, if you have a mixture and the majority is permitted and the minority is not allowed. Okay, so we say the minority is batal b'rov, but you can't intentionally just add on all this permitted wood in order to be mevatel the other wood, right? The muksa wood. You're not allowed to intentionally be mevatel an isser by just stacking on mutter stuff. So that's only by din d'oraisa. By din d'oraisa, such as, for example, if you have truma, and truma gets mixed together, right? As we learned earlier, by meduma, when you have a mixture of truma and chulin, so if there's 100 parts chulin to 1 part truma, so the truma is batal. Now, what if you have 99 parts chulin to 1 part truma? So we're saying you're not allowed to take 1 additional part of chulin and add it on to be mevatel the truma. You can't do that intentionally. If memele, it fell into a mixture, the truma fell into a mixture where there were already 100 parts of chulin, so beseder, it's batal. But you can't intentionally be mevatel it. But that's only by the oraisa, like truma. But b'drabanan, where am I? But if it's the derabanan like muktzah, it's okay. You could take the non-muktzah wood, stack it on top, and be mevatel the muktzah wood. What about Rav Ashi, who said earlier on the page that anything that kol davar sheish lo matirin, right? For example, when we had this Beitzah shenolda b'yom tiv, according to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, who said that it's only also midirabanan because of Perus Hanoshin or because of Mashkin Shazavu, and yet we're saying that if we're not sure if it's born on Yom Tif or during the week, still it's Aser, even though it's a Safek D'Rabbanan, because it's Davar Sheish Lo Matir, and just wait till after Yom Tif, then you can eat it. So it's not going to be batal. So here also, this wood, just wait till after Yom Tif, it won't be muksa anymore. So then, so we should say that it's not batal even if you add all this other wood. So what do you say according to Rav Ashi? Well, that is only such as by the egg where the egg isn't going anywhere. You have one egg mixed together with 1,000 other eggs. This one egg, if you just wait till tomorrow to be mutter, so then we say just wait, all the eggs are usher until tomorrow, and then all of them are mutter. But over here you're actually burning up the wood. The wood doesn't actually technically exist anymore, so therefore it would be able to become batal in such a way. Fine. Itmar shnei yom tovim shel golios. Okay, so now we get up to 2 yom tivs of golios, which is an interesting sugya, right? So up until now we were discussing when you have Shabbos followed by Yom Tiv followed by Shabbos, fine. So of course there's the halachos of Shabbos and the halachos of Yom Tiv. But what about Yom Tiv Sheni shel golios? Right, in Chutz La'aretz, in Eretz Yisrael, of course, we keep, 1 day of Yom Tiv in most cases, right? So for example, Pesach, you'll have 1 day of Yom Tiv at the beginning of Pesach in Eretz Yisrael, whereas in Chutz La'aretz, you'll have 2 days. So this is what's called Yom Tiv Sheni shel golios, that we add a 2nd day of Yom Tiv in the exile. Now, initially, the reason why we added an extra day was for practical reasons, for technical reasons, which is, well, how do you know when, right? Let's say take Pesach as an example. So in order to know, right, Pesach is the 15th day of Nisan. Well, in order to know when the 15th day of Nisan is, you have to know when the first day of Nisan is. And in order to know the first day of Nisan, you have to know when Rosh Chodesh is. And the only way to know Rosh Chodesh is based on the moon in Eretz Yisrael and the Bezdin in Yerushalayim. Or I think even Yavna, wherever the Bezdin was, wherever the Sanhedrin was. So now if you're far away, how are you going to know what the Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael said for what the first day of Nisan is? So the answer was it would take some time, and you wouldn't necessarily know before the 50 within 2 weeks. And therefore, there's 2 possibilities. Depending on if Adar was 30 days or 29 days, the first day of Pesach could be one of 2 days. So out of this doubt, out of this suffix, we keep 2 days of Yom Tif. We keep 2 days of Yom Tif, so that Memele, we were celebrating Yom Tif on the first day of Pesach. One of the days was definitely, so one of the days was technically a weekday. One of the days was the first day of Pesach. We don't know which one it is, so we celebrate both. Fine. So that's what's called Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios, the 2nd day of Yom Tov. Now the interesting thing is that nowadays there's a fixed calendar, right? Already you're going to see already in the Gemara, during their days already there was a fixed calendar. Now when there's a fixed calendar, we know when the first day of Pesach is, and therefore, yet we still keep 2 days of Yom Tiv in right, outside of Eretz Yisrael. So the question is why? Do we do it because, it didn't, right there, at this point, basically, the rabbi said that this is what we do. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, we keep 2 days, and it's 2 days of Yom Tif, not out of Suffolk anymore. It's just, this is the halacha, midirabanan. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, we keep 2 days of Yom Tif, and it's basically like one long day of Yom Tif. Or do we say that no, even now when we know, when the calendar is, we're still concerned. What about maybe there's some kind of maybe in the future there could be some kind of situation where we wouldn't know, and therefore just, we just keep the minig that we had initially, even though we technically do know which day is which, in which case we kind of know that one day is actually Yom Tif and one day is Chol, right? So therefore, do we kind of relate to it as both days just being one long day of Yom Tif, in which case, both days have the din of Yom Tif? Or do we say that even nowadays, when we know the official calendar, we still kind of keep the minig, but technically speaking, one day is Yom Tif and one day is a weekday. So, let's see, Itmar, who is stated, Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Galus, when it comes to the 2 days of Yom Tif that we keep outside of Eretz Yisrael, Rav Amar Nolder Bazeh, Muteres Bazeh, Shavasi Amar Nolder Bazeh, Asur Bazeh. So Rav says that nowadays, when we have Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galus, so if you have an egg born on the first day of Yom Tif, you're allowed to eat it on the second day of Yom Tif. Whereas Ravasi says no. Even if you have an egg born on the first day of Yom Tif, you're not allowed to eat it on the second day of Yom Tif. Lema K'savar Ravasi Kedusha Achasi. Let's say that Rav Asi says that we view both days of Yom Tif as one long holiness that doesn't stop until the night following the second day of Yom Tif, right? So you have one holiness that starts at the beginning, the eve of the first day of Yom Tif and continues until after the second day of Yom Tif. And therefore, an egg that's born on the first day of Yom Tif is going to be muktzah and continue being muktzah continue being asur until after both days of Yom Tif are over. But 1 second. But we also know that Rav Asi would taka after the first night of Yom Tif, he would make Havdalah. Meaning he would keep 2 days of Yom Tif, but they would be 2 separate holinesses, 2 separate Kedushas, and, he's not sure one of them, maybe was, let's say the first day was actually Yom Tif. So he would make Havdalah between the first day and the second day of Yom Tif. No, I'm sorry. That Rav Asi basically holds that nowadays, Memele, we know about the fixed calendar, and therefore we know for sure that the first day of Yom Tif was actually Yom Tif, and the second day we're only keeping as a minig. The second day we're only keeping as a minig, but we know that technically speaking, the fact of the matter is it's a weekday. So therefore he would make Havdalah after the first day of Yom Tif. So on the one hand, Rav Asi is saying that an egg born on the first day of Yom Tif, you're not allowed to eat on the second day of Yom Tif, which sounds like he's saying that it's all one long Yom Tif, that basically the Chacham said that even though we know about the fixed calendar and that we know that the first day of Yom Tif is the day of Yom Tif, and technically speaking the next day is a weekday, but once the Chacham said that this is what we do, that outside of Eretz Yisrael we keep 2 days, well then it's like one long holiness that doesn't end until after the second day. So that's why he's saying that an egg born on the first day, you're not allowed to eat on the second day. Yet at the same time, he's making Havdalah after the first day of Yom Tif, because he's saying the fact of the matter is we know that the first day of Yom Tif is Yom Tif, and the next day is really, we're just keeping it as a minig. Therefore, he would make Havdalah after the first day. So I don't understand. On the one hand, he's saying that an egg born on the first day, you're not allowed to eat on the second day, implying that it's one long Kedusha. Yet he's also making Havdalah after the first day, implying that it's only, that the second day of Yom Tif is only as a minig. But the fact of the matter is, we know that Yom Tif is technically over after the first day. So the Gemara answers, Rav Asi actually wasn't sure. He was not sure. So therefore, he would be machmir in both ways. When it comes to an egg born on the first day, he wouldn't eat it on the second day, he would wait till afterwards. And also when it comes to Havdalah, he would also make Havdalah after the first day because, technically speaking, that was Yom Tif. Amr Reb Zera says, Reb Zera Kavasid Rav Asi Mistavra, says Reb Zera that Itaka makes sense like Rav Asi. that an egg born on the first day, you're not allowed to eat on the second day, because after all, nowadays, says Reb Zeir, we know about the fixed calendar, so we know that the first day of Yom Tov is really Yom Tov, and yet we still keep a second day. What must it be? That the Chachamim said that we keep 2 days, and this is what we do. We keep 2 days, and therefore an egg born on the first day, don't eat it until after the second day, because it's all one Kedusha. Amr Abaye, Kavasa de Rav Mistabra. That a taka makes sense to say, like Rav, that an egg born on the first day of Yom Tov, you can eat on the second day of Yom Tov. How come? The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, that initially, everybody would actually know when Rosh Chodesh was, because what they would do is that when Bezdin said Mekudesh, Mekudesh, when Bezdin would establish Rosh Chodesh, they would go on top of the mountaintops with torches, and then as you would see the torch, you would go up to your mountaintop and light a torch, and it was like basically a domino effect until all of the towns and villages knew that, okay, there are torches, everyone's lighting torches, okay, today is Rosh Chodesh, and they would know when Rosh Chodesh is, and Mamela, they would know when, Pesach starts, or whatever other Chagim you need to know start. And they would only have to keep 1 day of Yom Tov, because they would know when it is. Mishikilkulu akusim, what happened was the kusim at a certain point started to be nudniks. And they would go up to the mountaintops and start lighting torches and throw everything off and confuse people. So they said, okay, well, we can't rely upon the torches anymore. It was good while it lasted, but unfortunately, there are people interfering with this. So they said, okay, well, we have no choice but to do it manually. We have to get messengers. We'll send them out to all the towns, Paul Revere style, and they'll ride over to every single town, and they'll say, look, this is when Rosh Chodesh was. But that would take time. Vilubadlu kusim avdinan chad yoma. But, in an ideal world, in a utopian society where there were no kusim, where there were no nudniks, there were no, we could rely upon the purity of the torches, that nobody was going to interfere. Well, then we would, snap right back to relying upon the torches. Or or any place where the messengers arrived and said, even if it was outside of Eretz Yisrael, if the messengers had already arrived and said, look, this is when Rosh Chodesh was, this is when the festivals are. So in those places, they would only have to keep 1 day. So what do we see? So therefore it would make sense to then say that the only reason why we would keep 2 days ever was only out of suffix. And if we would be able to revert to the torch system, where everybody would know quickly when Rosh Chodesh was, we could just rely upon that. Any place where the messengers would arrive there, they would only have to keep 1 day. And therefore, nowadays also, nowadays that we know when the festivals are because we have a fixed calendar, well then, it would make sense to say that we should only have to keep 1 day because we know. But my tamayo avdin treyome, then how come we keep 2 days? Mishum dishalchu mitam, because they sent from Dar and from Eretz Yisrael, izaru b'minig avosechem b'yadechem, hold on to the minig of your fathers. Your fathers kept 2 days out of suffix, you also keep 2 days. Zimrin degazu malchus gezer v'asel al kalkule. Because you never know what could be in the future. Maybe there could be some kind of nudnik rulers who are going to make a gzer that you're not allowed to study Torah, and then scholarship is going to decline, and people are going to get a little bit fuzzy about which day is Rosh Chodesh, and then you can go, again, it'll be in the same situation where you're not exactly sure which day is Yom Tov, so therefore just hold on to always doing 2 days. Even nowadays, when you know which day is Yom Tov, and which day is actually a weekday, nonetheless, you still hold on to keeping 2 days. So we see that according to Rav, we do technically know though which one is Yom Tov. I.e., the first day of Yom Tov is actually Yom Tov. The second day of Yom Tov is Chol, but we just do it as a minig. So therefore, an egg that's born on the first day of Yom Tov, you can eat on the second day of Yom Tov. Chevre, that was Daf Dal of Masech Beitzah. Man, this is like a real. It reminds me of Masech Shabbos. These are big dafs, a lot of content, a lot of material over here, but real quality, real sugyas over here. So Daf Daled started off today. We were talking about how exactly to understand this Beitzah. Right? We had a Beitzah that says that if you have a suffix with regard to an egg, it's asur. And we're trying to understand what that means, because according to Rav and Reb Yitzchak, according to Rav Yosef and Reb Yitzchak, it's only asur, right? An egg born in Yom Tov is only asur anyways, midirabanan, right? Peres Hanoshin or Mashkin Shazavu, and therefore if it's a suffix dirabanan, we're not sure if it was born on Yom Tov or during the week, so it should be permitted. So we want to say that no, that egg is talking about a suffix treifa, which is actually deoraisa, therefore it's the chumrah. But if it's a suffix treifa, then why does the Beitzah then say that if this one egg gets mixed together with 1,000 other eggs, it's not batal? It should be batal barov. So we wanted to explain that the reason why it's not batal is because it's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that when you have basically truma, that when you have these figs of truma, which are derabanan, because figs are only midirabanan truma, that gets mixed up with a whole bunch of like other figs, and you know exactly which ones they are. So it's something that could be sold as an individual unit, like an egg, and yet we're saying that it is not batal. It's considered significant, and that's by the Rabbanon. So Memele, by the Oraisa, like Treifa, it would be considered significant and it wouldn't be batal. So therefore, the author of that Beitzah is Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, fine. Then we saw the opinion of Rav Ashi, who says that no, you can even explain that it's like Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, that it's the Rabbanon, but since it's a davar sheish matirin, since it's something that could become, completely permitted the next day after Yom Tov, so therefore it's not going to be batal even in 1,000 other eggs. Okay, we then saw this other Beitzah of Acherim, that Acherim say, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that if you have a egg born on Yom Tov, you can eat the egg as well as the chicken. The question is, why do you have to teach about the chicken? Obviously, you can eat the chicken. If it's a chicken that's for eating, obviously you can eat it. So we had two explanations. Abaye says what it means. Well, Reb Zera says, and then Abaye explains that what it means is that it's talking about where you have a chicken that you bought without any specific intent, whether you're going to eat it or whether you're going to use it for its eggs. So Memele, if you end up checking the chicken, then that means that it's a food chicken, and therefore Memele you can eat the eggs. If you don't end up checking the chicken, then Memele it's an egg chicken, in which case you cannot eat the eggs because it's going to be muktzah. Rav Mari says it's just an exaggeration. What the Beitzah is saying is that you're allowed to eat the eggs, and then you can even eat the chicken, but it's just like an exaggeration. Fine. Then we saw this machlokus between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan about when you have Shabbos followed by Yom Tov. An egg that's born on Shabbos, can you eat it on Yom Tov? Rav says no. Rabbi Yochanan says yes. Okay, fine. We saw that Rabbi Yochanan says that when wood falls down from a tree on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it the next day on Yom Tov, even though an egg, Rabbi Yochanan says you would be allowed to use the next day, but a tree is different, because if we allow you to use it on Sunday, you might think that the reason why you weren't allowed to use it the previous day is not because it was muktzah, but because you're not allowed to burn wood on Shabbos. But you won't realize that actually wood that falls out on Yom Tov and falls down on Shabbos or Yom Tov is itself muktzah, and that's why you're not allowed to use it. So therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, if wood falls down from a tree on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it the next day on Yom Tov. We then saw the opinion of Rav Masna, that if you have wood that falls down, mamash, right into your oven on Yom Tov, you're allowed to just add, so even though that wood is muktzah, you're allowed to add non-muktzah wood to it and be mavatal it, and then you can use that oven. And we say, even though in general you're not allowed to intentionally be mavatal in Isser, but that's when we're talking about an Isser deoraisa. By an Isser derabanan, such as muktzah, it's okay. And according to Rav Ashi, who says that davar sheish lo matirin, that something that's going to become mutter is never batal. Well, he says that would be something like an egg that it's not going anywhere. Whereas this wood is going to get burnt up, and therefore it can become batal. Then we got to an interesting machlokas between Rab and Rab Asi about Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios, and it's really about gets into how do we relate to Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios. So Rav says that an egg that's born on the first day of Yom Tov outside of Eretz Yisrael, where we keep 2 days of Yom Tov, so you're allowed to eat it on the second day of Yom Tov. Whereas Rav Asi says you're not allowed to eat it on the second day of Yom Tov. And basically, it's a question of how do we relate to Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios. Basically, according to Rav's approach, we refer to Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios essentially, like nowadays, we know that the first day is actually Yom Tov, and we just keep the second day as a minig, even though technically speaking we know that it's a weekday, and therefore you're allowed to eat the egg on the second day, because technically speaking it's a weekday, but still we do preserve the minig and we keep 2 days of Yom Tov. According to Rav Asi, who says that an egg born on the first day you're not allowed to eat on the second day, the svara there would be that, well, the Chachamim said, look, even though, yes, initially we started out keeping 2 days of Yom Tov out of Safek, but once the Chacham said that we keep 2 days of Yom Tov, that's that. We keep 2 days of Yom Tov, and therefore it's considered like one long Kedusha, and therefore an egg born on the first day of Yom Tov doesn't become permitted until after the second day of Yom Tov. So it's very interesting in terms of how do we relate to Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golios now that we have the fixed calendar. Do we say that, look, we know that the first day is Yom Tov, and therefore the second day is really just as a minig, but we know that technically speaking it's not Yom Tov? Or do we say, look, the Chacham said that once it becomes Yom Tov, 2 days of Yom Tov, that's what it is, it's 2 days of Yom Tov, and that's that. That was Daf Dalet of Masechta Beitzah. It was a gewaltige daf. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.